Hey everyone, welcome to another awesome episode of Pathways and Paychecks. We have a really fun guest here. Her name is Mishali, and she's going to talk to you everything about how you see the world. Okay, that sounds like kind of deep, but she's an optometrist and she'll tell you about everything about it. So let's get started.
Hi guys, my name is Dr. Patel. It's nice to meet y'all. Thank you for having me here, Dressy.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So, so Mishali, I've known you not too long, maybe like a year, 2 years, maybe a year or two, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but obviously we know your husband for a very long time now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So so we met your husband probably like 10, more than 10, 15 years ago at this point. And you guys started dating maybe 2 or 3 years ago, or not that long ago.
We've actually been together for now, gosh, almost 7 years, 6 to 7 years.
Wow,
Yeah.
time flies. But oh, that's right. But you got engaged like 2 years ago,
Yeah,
or
we just got engaged about,
yeah, and then got just married.
yeah.
So how's everything going? How's your, I know the career's new, the married life is new. How's everything going?
Everything's been really good. It's been nice finally to get settled into a new city and, start my career in a new city, which has been
Mm-hmm.
a huge change for me personally. But it's been a good journey so
Yeah.
far. So, yeah, I'm excited to see where it will take us.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, how you ended up picking this career?
Sure. So I kind of started out wanting to get into the medical field pretty early on. I come from a family where I have two older sisters, so kind of following in their footsteps was what really drove
Mm-hmm.
that passion for me personally.
Hmm.
I started kind of dabbling in the field of medicine when I was actually in eighth or ninth grade. It
Oh
was part of
wow.
a careers class, and they asked us
Mm-hmm.
to go shadow somebody in the local community that you were interested in, potentially seeing yourself fit in
Mm-hmm.
that role one day or another. So I called a bunch of local optometrists, dentists,
Oh,
even
okay.
doctors, and the only
Mm-hmm.
person that got back to me was the optometrist. Funny
That
enough.
is so funny.
Yeah. So I got the pleasure of spending a day with one of the optometrists in my town, and she let me kind of shadow her for the day and follow her on all
Mm-hmm.
the patients and see what it
Mm-hmm.
would be like, a small glimpse of what it would be like to be an optometrist for
Mm-hmm.
a day. And that was kind of where my love for optometry first started. It was
Mm-hmm.
crazy. I didn't really pay too much mind to it after that one
Yeah.
episode in eighth grade that I had encountered. After that,
Mm-hmm.
we go through middle school and high school not thinking too much about what you're going
Mm-hmm.
to do with your life. You're just trying
For
to,
sure. It's too early in some ways,
yeah,
but maybe not.
right. You're just trying to make it. But after that, I would say in high school it was kind of first when I decided to take it more seriously as far as the medical field. Um,
Mm-hmm.
both of my sisters, one of them, to give you a little back history, one's was always wanting to go to medical school. She never
Mm-hmm.
decided to go that route just due to schooling and finances. But my
Mm-hmm.
other sister ended up going to PA school. So I'd had pretty good kind of role
Okay.
models in my life as far as where I
Yeah.
needed to be, as far as my career
Mm-hmm.
and also school. What classes did I need to take? I kind of had a roadmap planned out for me,
For
which was
sure.
really nice. Not a lot of people can say that they
Mm-hmm.
had all that exposure. Um, but once I got to high school, that's when I took it more seriously, and I was lucky to go to a school
Mm-hmm.
that offered such a wide range of classes that you could take for college credit.
Mm-hmm.
I took a bunch of IB classes and AP classes that allowed me to kind of get basically almost an associate's even before getting into undergrad. But
That's really
yeah,
awesome.
some of those classes also included like a clinicals rotation. So I started out
Okay.
with my certified nursing assistant certification class,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to kind of graduate from that class with that with many hours
Mm-hmm.
of working with a ton of people, different patients in nursing homes. We did rotations through that class, which was kind of cool. Not a lot of people got to.
So this is in high
This was in high
school. That's
school,
amazing.
yeah. It was part of our curriculum. You got to decide if you wanted to do that versus there were other avenues that our high school provided that a lot of people wanted to do the media
Mm-hmm.
space. So there was a news anchor similar to like what you would have
Oh, yeah.
news channels nowadays, but they had a news
Mm-hmm.
anchor sector. They had a culinary sector. Like there was different
That's fun.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
curricular activities, but it was actually embedded into your curriculum, which was kind of nice.
Yeah, that's really wholesome.
Yeah, so I did that my junior year of high school, and then my senior year they had another program which you could graduate high school with your EMT license, which is your emergency medical
Mm-hmm.
technician certification. So I did that. Got a lot more exposure to kind of emergency medicine. We were able to rotate through the local
Mm-hmm.
fire departments and get our training that way, and
That's really
actually
cool.
get like hands on like critical care. And that
Yeah.
really wasn't. I kind of figured out at that moment that
Mm-hmm.
true medicine wasn't really my passion. It was a little too much adrenaline for me at that moment. But I definitely found my love for helping patients throughout those two
Yeah.
classes, and that kind of solidified like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of the pathway I wanted to go down. I just didn't know if the
Yeah.
traditional, going to medical school would be for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fast forward, after my high school degree, I applied to my undergraduate program, and I wasn't really looking for specific schools. I really just knew I wanted to stay close to home. So I
Mm-hmm.
ended up going to one of the local colleges that
Mm-hmm.
was really known for their like math and science and health studies degree plans. So I took
Okay.
my chance and I applied. And after that, I also had applied for a scholarship.
Okay.
This scholarship was unique in the fact that it was a full ride. And
Oh,
full ride meaning all 4 years of tuition plus like my room and board was covered for
okay.
4 years. So it was kind of
That is so impressive.
it was kind of a hard scholarship to get, but I was lucky to be selected. So
Yeah.
that
So,
was
couple questions
huge.
just backing up.
Yeah.
What kind of school did you go to? Was it a public school? Was it a private school? A charter
It
school?
was a public school.
Okay.
My high school was also a public school too. Both of the schools I
Mm-hmm.
came from, classic big school in Texas that had
Mm-hmm.
like my graduating class. My graduating class in high school was about 1,500 students.
Mm-hmm.
We were the only high school in
Okay.
our town.
Mm-hmm.
And then my undergraduate program was also a public school. It was one of the smaller local
Okay.
schools. It wasn't like a huge state school like
Okay. But it wasn't
UNC.
private, right?
It was not. Yeah, it was UT
Okay.
Dallas. It was a
Oh,
local
okay.
community school that
That's not a small school though.
it's not now. Back in the day, it was
Okay.
mainly known for
All
being
right.
like that
Fair enough.
commuter school. A lot of people would go to
Okay.
that school and usually just get their 2 years and then transfer over to one of the state schools. So, but now it's
Okay.
definitely ramping up. They're definitely taking a lot more
Yeah, for
students and
sure.
becoming bigger for sure.
Yeah, my husband went to UTD, so when we visited, we went to Dallas, UT Dallas
Mm-hmm.
too, and you're right, it does have like a small college-ish feel,
Yeah.
but it's definitely probably grown
Oh
since
yeah.
you guys went, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you found that scholarship. Did you apply to a lot of them, or how did you come about
I
it?
did. So I applied for a vast number of scholarships. That was one I had on my radar because my sister had also applied to that scholarship. And
Okay.
she didn't end up receiving it, but I thought I would give
Mm-hmm.
it a shot. She actually ended up going to the same school I did. So
Mm-hmm.
it was nice to have that as kind of a
Mm-hmm.
secondary option for me. But I applied to that and a bunch of other scholarships that were kind of local to our area. I didn't receive any national scholarships, but there were definitely a couple local small ones that were,
Mm-hmm.
$1,000 here, $500 there, write your essay. And most of them were geared towards actually like women in kind of the STEM space, which was
Mm.
really
Okay.
nice. It kind of correlated with where I wanted to
Yeah.
go with my career too. So,
Okay, makes sense. I'm sure like your GPA or SAT, ACT scores, all your AP classes definitely helped, I'm sure. But I think you also had like a very rounded application. I think that probably speaks to it too, just because of your prior experiences and just the background you already had when you were applying to undergrad programs.
I would say so. One, I started working at a pretty young age, and in high school, I did a lot of shadowing and just having those two kind of clinical backgrounds with the EMT and the CNA
Mm-hmm.
program. That definitely helped my
Mm-hmm.
like undergraduate application kind of
Mm-hmm.
stick out compared to other
Yeah.
people. I also started working at an
Mm-hmm.
urgent care when I was probably 16. That
Wow.
was my first job as a
That's
greeter, but
awesome.
definitely those kind
Yeah.
of helped boost my application in general
Mm-hmm.
to gain me that
Yeah.
scholarship.
Okay. All right. So now, gearing into your undergrad experience, how did you navigate your skills, your interests? What made you finally narrow down?
Sure. I actually took on taking on like the biology degree, the traditional kind of route that a lot
Mm-hmm.
of medical students or healthcare students take. And I decided that route wasn't actually for me. So I ended up
Mm-hmm.
selecting a different major. I think it was
Okay.
within the first semester I realized that there was actually another major at my school that they had offered that was specific to optometry. It was a healthcare studies
Mm.
major with the kind of emphasis or prerequisites required for optometry school on the pre-optometry track. So I
Okay.
decided to switch my major after kind of taking a couple classes and knowing that like the traditional biology route, getting that degree wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
really help me in a certain way to where I wanted to get into
Mm-hmm.
optometry school.
So, what was so different about the pre-optometry route?
It was all the prerequisites that you would need to apply to optometry schools. Some optometry schools didn't
Mm-hmm.
require you to have a 4-year degree. So you could
Mm-hmm.
get those prerequisites without having to graduate with
Mm-hmm.
your full on undergraduate degree. So
Okay.
it kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
fast tracked you. However, that wasn't the
Mm-hmm.
route that I ended up taking. I still ended up completing my 4 years of undergrad, but it gave you that option.
Okay.
And there were certain schools that
Okay,
allowed you
got
to
it.
get into that program.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. When did you start applying to optometry schools? Was it like your third year or your fourth year of
It
undergrad?
was my senior year of undergrad. It was when I started applying. We were lucky in the sense that we had career advisors, and the advisors would kind of help guide you in that process to a certain extent. But also joining
Mm-hmm.
the pre-optometry society or club affiliated
Mm,
with that university was great because I got to hang out with other
okay.
people that were interested in the same career path, and two were also in the same boat as far as applying for optometry
Mm-hmm.
school. So when they were submitting their applications, I was like, oh my goodness, I should definitely get on
Mm,
that and start prepping my application. So it
mm-hmm.
was definitely
Mm-hmm.
earlier on in my senior year where I think application cycles opened up in March of that
Mm-hmm.
year, and they started making
Mm-hmm.
decisions pretty soon after that.
How many schools did you apply to?
So I ended up applying to I think it was almost 12 schools, with the anticipation that I didn't think I would get into any of them, but
Oh,
I got interviews at every single school.
that's awesome.
So it was really ball was in my court as far as where I wanted
Yeah,
to go. It was just a matter of finding the right fit. Each school is
that makes
different.
sense.
With
Mm-hmm.
each school in interview, you got to, get a vibe of how the school ran, their curriculum. Each school had a different curriculum set, a different class size,
Mm-hmm.
class number. So
Mm,
it really just
okay.
depended on what you wanted to get out of your program. Any school you were going to go to for
Mm-hmm.
optometry school, and I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
it's the same for pharmacy school too. You're going to come out
Mm-hmm.
with that 4-year degree. You're going to be
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're
Yeah.
educated enough to where you're able to go on
Mm-hmm.
get a job and be able to work, but it's just a matter of
But still, yeah, it does
yeah, it
matter.
does matter.
Yeah, there's definitely nuances in each program.
Right.
And one thing I found interesting was, and I maybe the number is different, but when I looked it up earlier, I only saw there's only 27 schools in the whole United States.
Yeah,
Does that sound
it
right?
does. Yeah, so it's actually a very small number. You would think that with how
That is
many
so interesting.
optometrists there are, we would have more schools,
Mm-hmm.
but each state, for the most part, I know that there's a couple states that don't even have a school, so it's
Yeah,
not
I don't think
common.
North Carolina has one.
Yeah. I actually had a classmate that was from North Carolina, and she came to my school in Texas because there was no other option for her
Hmm.
close by.
So is there a huge demand, or is it just like balanced out with demand and how many students they graduate every year?
There is a huge demand as far as applicants that apply. Of
Mm-hmm.
those, I think only a portion are selected because they only have a certain number of seats that they
Mm-hmm.
can fill at each school. I went to one of the
Okay.
bigger schools. I graduated from UHCO, which is the University of Houston. Their College of Optometry had
Mm-hmm.
about 100 seats. That was probably on the larger
Mm-hmm.
side.
Okay.
And some of the schools had as little as 12 seats. So,
Hmm. Wow, that is so interesting.
yeah, so it really just
Because I feel
depends.
like it's definitely one of those careers where everyone knows an optometrist and goes to an optometrist. But I just find it interesting that, because, like, for example, for pharmacy, there's like three or four colleges in North Carolina, and same with other states. Like, I'm sure there's at least three or four, at least in every state. But I was just surprised, and I just thought that was
Yeah, it's
interesting.
pretty crazy. I always thought going into this career field that like eventually they would come out with more schools, but even gosh,
Mm-hmm.
3 years out of being out of school, like they've only
Mm-hmm.
opened one new school, and I don't think that has kind of accommodated for the demand because it is
Mm-hmm.
kind of growing,
Yeah.
especially for optometrists in this day and age, which is
Yeah.
nice.
Well, maybe it's good. Maybe it'll help with job security.
Right,
There's some benefits to that, I
that
guess.
is true. That is true.
I wanted to talk about a minor difference that a lot of people they might get these terms interchange or find it confusing. So, difference between optician, optometrist, and ophthalmologist.
Sure.
Can you talk about
Yeah.
this?
So, opticians are usually a term that is used for people that dispense glasses. Now, in the
Mm-hmm.
United States, it's a little bit different. It's anyone that works in the optical setting. So, where, once you go see the doctor, you're going outside to pick out your glasses. That's the person that's helping you pick out a frame that fits your face, tell you the lens
Mm-hmm.
options. So, they're really helping you on the latter half of the appointment to figure out what type of frame style works for you, lens type. So they do not require an optometry degree, nor are they associated as being a doctor, but they do require
Okay.
certifications. So they
Mm-hmm.
do have to go through kind of a rigorous program where they test for getting certified and getting their qualification that way. Now, the difference from
Okay.
that versus to what I am, which is an optometrist, that requires going to a 4-year program for undergrad and then
Mm-hmm.
also going through a 4-year optometry program, which is your doctoral degree. And you're
Mm-hmm.
able to treat patients, prescribe medications,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of have a full scope of practice for the most part, depending on your
Mm-hmm.
state licensure. And the difference
Okay.
between optometrists versus ophthalmologists have done 4 years of medical school. And
Mm-hmm.
then after that, they go into their fellowship and residency
Mm-hmm.
years in which they specialize in ophthalmology. Now, ophthalmologists are able to perform surgical procedures. They're doing the
Mm-hmm.
ones, they're doing cutting of the eyeballs, they're doing the cataract surgery, they're
Mm-hmm.
doing the LASIK. Optometrists are not legalized to do those procedures.
Mm-hmm.
There are minor procedures we're allowed to do in some states regarding laser
Okay.
procedures, but still
Mm-hmm.
ophthalmology handles majority of the surgical side of
Mm-hmm.
everything related to the eyes. So that's kind of the difference
Mm-hmm.
as far as
Yeah.
the three.
Okay. And another thing I found interesting is like you guys are definitely like a blend of like obviously you guys are doctors because you're doing a lot of like diagnosing and you're even doing prescribing. But I guess the major difference would be like major procedures in the way I'm thinking. So that was very interesting too.
Yeah, because a lot of us Optometry is kind of becoming more of a wider field to kind of bridge the gap between ophthalmologists. There are
Mm-hmm.
not that many ophthalmologists out there for the number of patients that we have to care for, the aging population. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that gap is being filled by optometrists. We're technically like the primary care of the eyes. So a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
minor injuries, if you were to scratch your eye with your fingernail or,
Mm-hmm.
something hit your eye, you feel like your eye is irritated. A lot of those red eye instances,
Mm-hmm.
those are seen by optometrists. And
Yeah.
now, as kind of state licensure and exposure is kind of increasing knowledge on how much we get taught in school to be able to teach to the
Mm-hmm.
fullest amount of scope. Some states are
Mm-hmm.
allowing us to do laser procedures, like I had mentioned, to kind of help with glaucoma and
Oh, pretty
post
cool.
cataract laser procedures as well. So that scope is
Mm-hmm.
definitely increasing between the two, and yeah, who knows? Maybe in the next couple of years we'd be able to
Yeah.
assist on surgeries as well. I see that kind of ending up as
Yeah,
a
that's really
future.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, I was thinking of a few more questions while you were talking. One, I know you guys have like licensure exams. Like once you're done with your degree, you have to take like a final exam, right? I think it's similar for pharmacy school. And then you have to take like state exams as well. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
So,
Okay,
optometry is a state licensed profession. So, state by state, they kind of develop what type of scope you can practice at. So,
makes
some of
sense.
the states off the top of my head that are allowed to do those laser procedures, me as a North Carolina optometrist, I'm not legally allowed to perform those laser procedures here. However, if I were to go get licensed in Oklahoma, I can surely go do those
Mm,
procedures
okay.
at full scope. And we are taught all of those
Wow,
procedures in optometry school.
that's impressive.
Yeah, so it just really depends.
Does it freak you out when you do the procedures, or are you used to it?
Um, for me now moving to this state, not having done those
Mm-hmm.
laser procedures, 2 to 3 years
Mm-hmm.
out, if someone were to tell me to go
Mm-hmm.
back and start lasering people, yeah, it would probably give me a little bit of anxiety. I would probably have to freshen up on my skills, but
Mm-hmm.
um, it's a big responsibility, and I think there's a huge gap that
Yeah.
still needs to be met with our
Mm-hmm.
patient population. So
Yeah, for
as
sure.
we gain kind of more exposure to that and optometry increasing their scope state by state.
Mm-hmm.
I think just the other month, Florida was actually fighting, the Florida optometrists were fighting for their right to be called physicians. So
Mm-hmm.
even,
Yeah.
years after having so many optometrists kind of out there practicing, there's still these kind of attempts to see where do we
Mm-hmm.
fit into the realm of medicine, and are we able to kind of coexist with
Mm-hmm.
ophthalmology and still not take away too much from their scope
Yeah,
and
that
be
makes
able to
sense.
still hold our niche too.
Yeah, pretty cool. So I know at one point you worked in South Carolina as well because you kind of lived at the
Hmm.
border. Do you still do that, or are you completely in North Carolina now?
I don't work in South Carolina at the moment. I still hold my license for South Carolina. So it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
easy once you kind of apply and get your licensure for a state to kind of hold it. You do have to do continuing
Mm-hmm.
education hours to uphold that
Yeah.
license.
Mm-hmm.
But currently, no, I do not. I don't actively practice in South
Okay.
Carolina.
Makes sense. Can you talk about some of the settings you guys work in? Because I feel like I know there's like clinics, but then there's also like retail where you guys are in Costco's and Walmarts and stuff too.
Yeah. So I've gotten kind of a pretty wide range exposure to a lot of different practices, one throughout my training, but also as I work too. But what I'm in right now is a corporate optometry setting where a big corporation owns the office that you work out of and you're an employee of. But that's not
Mm-hmm.
to say that's the only type of practice. A lot of optometrists practice privately, so they own the building that they work out of. There's also
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different settings that optometrists can go within, such as the VA. You can start working with vets and be able to provide them care. There's also dry eye clinics that are specific towards treating solely dry eye with dry eye procedures that
Hmm.
optometrists can work out of.
Okay.
There are some optometrists that solely focus on myopia management / myopia control. That's a huge epidemic that's happening amongst all these kids getting those
Hmm.
devices.
That's
So
right.
seeing that need and kind of fitting that niche, there's tons of different ways that we could try and specialize within our career, and that's one of them. Another
Hmm.
career kind of output / subspecialty that you can work within is specialty contact lenses. Outside of the soft contact lenses that everybody can just pop in and toss, there are ones that
Hmm.
we train to basically mold to your eye, and those are for specific conditions such as keratoconus, post-refractive surgery.
Hmm.
There's a whole range of things
Wow.
that people have kind of built up their own clinics based on these subspecialties. So those are,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
some of the few. And then you can also go work at an ODMD practice, which is how I started out my practice.
Hmm.
In North and South Carolina, working with ophthalmologists hand in hand, seeing their pre and post operative care patients. So, pre cataract
Oh,
surgery,
okay.
post cataract surgery, pre LASIK, post LASIK. So,
Hmm.
a wide range of things.
Wow, I did not know there were
Yeah.
so many things and so many different choices
Right.
within like a niche like this. Because I feel like you don't hear too much about optometrists in general.
Yeah.
Because I think most people just associate them just going for their regular yearly eye exam.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's about it.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting.
Yeah. And now there's actually a whole nother niche now with more pharmaceutical companies coming up and actually hiring doctors on their panel. The
Mm-hmm.
same goes for contact lens manufacturers. They're also hiring
Oh
optometrists
wow,
to
true.
be on their panel to kind of do research and development. So there's also that aspect of
Mm, that makes
optometry
sense.
that you can delve
Yeah.
into. So lots of options.
That reminded me of one thing. So when I was during on one of my rotations for pharmacy school, it was my first hospital one. They offered me to watch a couple surgeries. So I watched like two or three procedures. I watched a colonoscopy. I watched some like a I don't know, some organ removal. I don't know if it was like appendix or something. I can't remember at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But then the third one I watched was a cataract surgery.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd be able to handle just like the other ones, but I passed out
Did
during the
you
cataract
really?
surgery. Yeah, I did not think that was going to happen.
Oh my goodness.
So I think it takes special people, I think.
Yeah, to watch something like that happen. No, that is
Yeah, yeah.
definitely, that is funny. I mean, when I was shadowing, and I got the chance to watch a couple cataract surgeries, they told us like make sure you're bending your knees,
Mhm.
like not locking them in, because they've probably
True.
had many people faint or pass
Yeah.
out in the OR for sure. You wouldn't be the first one.
I don't think I mean, I could probably watch heart surgery, like, other things, but
Yeah,
I think, and I did not expect it, but I don't think I could watch
yeah,
an eye surgery, any kind of cataract surgery. I got LASIK done, but even that was like once and done.
yeah.
Once you go through it, it's kind of scars you a little bit.
Right.
Okay, I have another question.
Sure.
So, when you were talking, I kind of realized, so is there a chance of you opening like your own practice in the future? Is that something you've considered at all? Like
Um,
starting your own business kind of thing?
Yeah, that is something that's definitely on my radar to do. Kind of, I'm in a different position since I am one of the kind of newer graduates. It takes a little bit of time for you to understand how optometry works as not one, as only kind of a medical practice, but two, as a business. There's a retail side
Mm-hmm.
to it with the optical, and there's also the back end portion of running a medical office. There's billing, coding. There's
Mm-hmm.
so many different
Yeah,
facets of that you have to kind of understand. So
true.
given that I'm still kind of new to being out there and in practice, I definitely kind of want to
Mm-hmm.
learn those skills over time. But yeah, within 5 to 10 years, do I see myself opening up my practice? That would be a dream. Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, cool. I think we talked about a lot of things that I think a lot of people normally ideally wouldn't know about. So
Hmm.
I'm really glad we talked about those. I do want to hit on one or two more things. One, we already talked about like different settings and different roles and how you could move up in different settings.
Hmm.
And you kind of addressed to that like the corporate world too. Can you kind of address some of the salary ranges that might be associated that the audience would like to know?
Sure. So salary ranges kind of range depending on how many years exposure you had in your clinical practice, your clinical setting. So someone who's first starting out in practice is definitely not going to make the same as someone who's been out in practice for about 20, 30 years plus,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Fair.
Also, each of those settings that I had mentioned to you can also have a different
Mm-hmm.
range within each of those. So
Mm-hmm.
someone who typically
Yeah.
works for a VA tends to not make as much salary wise as somebody who's going outright and working at a private practice or starting their own private practice. The amount of revenue that they're going to
Mm-hmm.
build is going to eventually come back to them as a form of their salary. The
Mm-hmm.
corporate optometry setting is one of the ones that you can kind of make a little bit more of on the front end. And I think that's similar to pharmacy too, where,
Mm-hmm.
if you go into a corporate setting, you're tending to make the
Mm-hmm.
higher range of that salary range.
For sure.
And then also those specialty clinics, a lot of them don't, accept insurance. So all of that is self-pay and out of pocket. So there's a bigger
Mm-hmm.
niche for those doctors there to get more salary because their range of practice and how
Mm-hmm.
they're bringing in that revenue is a
Mm-hmm.
lot wider. So as far as kind of a given number, if you were starting out in where I started out in Texas as a optometrist, the range is there from, gosh, and I've seen as low as $90,000
Mm-hmm.
as a starting optometrist to anywhere from
Mm-hmm.
120 to 130 your first year out of
Mm-hmm.
practice. But obviously that
Mm-hmm.
can exponentially grow over different practices and time as far as your exposure
Mm-hmm.
in that clinical practice and setting. So
Mm-hmm.
even state to state, it varies quite a bit too. So North Carolina tends to pay
Mm-hmm.
their
Yeah.
optometrists a lot more than South Carolina. So even between the state
Mm-hmm.
line, it's a huge difference
Yeah.
there too. So it can go upwards
Yeah.
of 500,000 if you're running a multi-million-dollar practice. So it really just depends on
Yeah.
the avenue that you
True.
choose.
Yeah. I agree. I see a lot of similarities with pharmacy school for sure, and being like the pharmacy profession in general too.
Mm-hmm.
Because even for ours, like if you were to do like a more corporate route, or if you were to do like the pharmaceutical companies route, where you're helping with like the drug development and marketing, and there's like MLS positions, or wait, medical liaison, yeah, medical science liaison, MSL
Mm-hmm.
positions, where they tend to make more too, and they're helping the doctor's offices incorporate the drug in their practice and things like that. So yeah, I agree. Depending on the role and depending on the niche you're interested in, there's so many options in all these
Mm-hmm.
ancillary medical fields, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
All right. So last question. What does your day look like? Like how many patients are you seeing, and what does your day look like for someone who, like, most people are just familiar with like the retail setting, but like the more clinical setting, what does your day-to-day look like?
Sure. So my day to day, I'm in a practice right now where I see a lot of primary care. So I'm seeing all the routine eye exams at the moment, and I see a range of anywhere from 15 to 23 patients a day. It just depends on how
Hmm,
booked our
that can be a
schedule.
lot.
Yeah, it just depends on what you feel comfortable with, right? A lot of
Okay.
doctors that I know also decrease their schedule. I'm one that likes to be on my feet and, bop into
Mm-hmm.
exam room to exam room. So for me, it's not that big of a difference from the modality that I was working in prior to that, which was a little bit more laid back. There was less patients on my schedule, but spread out over a 30-minute period. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of been a mix of routine eye exams. I see a lot of emergency walk-in patients too with red eyes, or painful
Makes sense.
eyes and injuries as well. We remove a lot of
Mm-hmm.
foreign bodies and patients that are like
Ah.
welders and plumbers and all the
Oh,
range.
interesting. Oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. And then I also see quite a bit of mix in my schedule for a lot of medical patients too. So diabetic eye exams, I see a ton of diabetics.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new initiative now that a lot of the primary care doctors are requiring their patients to go get their annual eye exam done because diabetes is one of the leading
Mm,
causes of blindness. So a lot of
for
optometrists are
sure.
taking on that role too. but also seeing a lot of glaucoma patients as well. So we have testing to kind of rule out whether or not patients have glaucoma. So I run that in my office as well. And then lastly, I see a lot of contact lens patients doing their contact lens examinations. But yeah, so it's kind of a
Cool.
quite a bit of mix of things. But it
Yeah.
keeps the days interesting. I probably would see in a half day around anywhere from 8 to 12 patients in a half day. So it
Yeah.
starting at 8 o'clock, going all the way to 12. I see my patients on a 20-minute schedule, but a lot of other doctors see
Gotcha.
15 or see it on a 30-minute base schedule. So it just depends.
Makes sense. All right. I have one or two random facts that we're gonna close out with,
Okay.
and you probably already know it, but I thought this is very interesting.
Okay.
Okay. So some of these two are basic ones. It says the average blink lasts 1/10 of a second. I was kind of surprised. I thought it would be longer than that,
So
but
that number is actually that's our average blink as it should be. Now with more digital
mhm,
devices, that blink number is definitely decreasing.
I see.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of patients with more dry eye because they're not blinking as often when they're looking at those
Mm,
computers. But yeah, it's
gotcha.
pretty crazy.
So, which kind of which ties into my second one, says average person blinks 12 times a minute. Maybe that number's probably gone up to now.
Yeah, it was. I would say it's actually gone down. So we're tending to blink less frequently. So those muscles tend to
Oh,
get
got it.
lazy
Okay.
over time. Yeah,
Ah, I see.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, I have a third one.
Okay.
Babies are famous for their crying, but they don't produce tears until 4 to 13 weeks. I was shocked at that. But then I went back to like thinking about my kids when they were young, kids when they were younger, and I could not remember. Yeah, they used to like they sound out the cry, but I didn't realize they don't actually have tears.
Yeah, so actually, a lot of babies, I think their lacrimal gland doesn't develop until that time frame. So, a lot of them do not even
Hmm.
just have the ability to produce tears at that point. So, yeah.
Hmm, very cool. All right, that's all I had. Is there anything else you want to tell the audience before we wrap up?
Um, optometry is a great career field. I think it's going to expand over the next couple years. So if it's something that you're
Mm-hmm.
interested in, it's always good to find a mentor local to you and just kind of get your feet
Yeah.
wet and see if you can shadow them, just as I did. And I think that will go the longest way.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. I know a lot of people will benefit. If not, it'll just be a very interesting career path to look into and just hear about.
Yeah,
So thank you
no, thank you
again.
for having me. I appreciate it.